Dragon Ball, Suave?
Yes?
You thought this.
You ruined my new suit! And my brother just made it too! No fair! No fair! Huh?
Was Dragon Ball.
Yes.
I am so angry right now.
Look, in my defense, it's very easy to make that mistake when you've had as much to drink as I had.
You could drink a bathtub full of gin and still be able to tell the difference between one of the most famous anime ever made and Super Kid.
Is that a challenge?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Due to some mitigating circumstances, today's episode is not on a seminal anime classic, but rather on a knockoff of a seminal anime classic. Pardon our dust. It's been quite some time since we talked about the weird cottage industry that has sprouted around the filmmaking business that is remake-exploitation films, which, for the lack of a proper definition, are movies usually made on the extremely cheap that are either homages to certain major motion pictures or just complete rip-offs, depending on how far they go. For instance, a good number of these films were made in the country of Turkey, including, but not limited to, Turkish Star Wars, Turkish Rambo, and Turkish Straw Dogs. Look hard enough and you could probably find every movie made in the 80s remade by Turkey, and might I add, to some entirely charming results. Of course, this notion of remake-exploitation extends further into anime, which brings us neatly to the tumultuous relationship Japan shares with its neighbors to the west, Korea. The history between Japan and Korea is rough, to put it as lightly as possible, so it is no surprise that for the longest time, Japanese-made goods, read anime, manga, and video games, were embargoed from entering Korea until the 1990s. So, without a legal channel to purchase and/or license such media, enterprising animators, producers, and directors came together to make their own anime, borrowing character designs, music, and otherwise giving international copyright law the finger along the way. We have been privy to these kinds of products before. Anyone here remember Space Thunder Kids?
I protest! I protest! I protest! America launched a missile against my nation! Huh?
Shut up, will ya? Put your shoe back on, you stinking up the General Assembly!
Thing is, these anime were never made for an audience outside of Korea, but that didn't stop them from being made available at Walmart for $1 a piece.
How can that robot crumble so easily, like cookies?
Watch your mouth, Dr. Bear!
Question: is it moral to ask for $1 refund? Still, the existence of these knockoff anime doesn't baffle me, so much as it kind of delights the perverse side of my brain. I honestly love the fact that I live in a world where I could see a Korean animated Tron.
So you finally got in here. Let's see how good you really are.
But what does baffle me is the existence of Super Kid, a 1995 Dragon Ball ripoff that somehow made its way over here. Not only did it make its way here, but it was dubbed by Ocean Studios, with performances by Paul Dobson and Scott McNeil, as if the comparisons to Dragon Ball weren't strong enough, right, Zarbon and Piccolo? I'm not gonna lie, this is going to be a sit. But it is high time we took another look at the sometimes infuriating but always weird world of Korean remake-exploitation anime. This is Super Kid. Like many a chop job I've seen before, the movie starts with a 3-minute trailer for itself that goes into excruciating detail, It's almost like the movie is trying to give the audience an out.
Part science fiction, part fantasy. Super Kid is filled with laughs, thrills, and terror. Out-of-this-world characters and heroes you can cheer for will fascinate audiences of all ages. A full-length feature film, 3 years in the making.
So what you're saying is that this is the Boyhood of Korean knockoff anime. I was gonna make some kind of crack about how depressing it is that if we went by the trailer's word, it took them 3 years to make this, but honestly, if we're gonna be judging on a curve, this is probably the best looking knockoff I've seen. But as soon as I say that, it looks like it's gone to the movie's head.
Detailed animation and exciting action sequences unlike anything that has ever been seen before.
What?
Detailed animation and exciting action sequences unlike anything that has ever been seen before.
Detailed animation!
Detailed animation.
There's a difference between polishing a turd and brazen, unapologetic lying. As the movie finally begins, we get an eyeful of what we're in for. Oh, I don't mean the shoddy animation, I mean the god-awful camera movement. Shots that zoom in and out with no rhyme or reason, pans that make it seem like a wino was behind the camera, and edits that can make your eyes water. Thing is, though, this is not necessarily the movie's fault. The Spanish version of the movie is plain and still. There's none of this manic, constant motion of the camera, which leads me to believe that this was a purposeful decision on the English-speaking licensor's behalf. Which really is a new low here on Anime Abandoned. I mean, sure, Central Park Media tried to use editing tricks to hide the animation mistakes in ND Geist, but that was just for a few scenes. It wasn't throughout the entire anime! Also, if you're resorting to such obvious tricks to hide as much of the awful animation as you can, why did you lay down the coin to localize this heap in the first place? Ugh. Anyway, here's Bulma. Yeah. Remember the time when Bulma's dragon radar became a sentient monster and haunted your nightmares? You do now. This time around, Bulma seems to be playing the part of Lois Lane, and she marks out like crazy when she receives a tip that the Super Kids are fighting a monster and proceeds to trample everyone in her path like a middle-aged mom on Black Friday to finally get some footage of the heroic team.
Okay, let me see what you got.
Subject's name, Gokdari, leader of the Super Kids, possesses superhuman strength, believed to be 199 years old.
I'm sorry, but if there exists a full-on stat card for every member of the Super Kids, what scoop are you really getting here, Bulma? Oh, and it seems Goku, no, wait, I mean Gokdari here is the leader of the Super Kids, or the Gokdari group as it were. I mean, both are terrible names, but at least one of them doesn't have the stink of an ego project. And let's meet the rest. Looks like Yajirobe if he went into the teleportation pod on the fly after Krillin peed in it. That one's obviously Yamcha, actually more like punished Yamcha. That's a less obvious Master Roshi, but hold on, if he's in the group, why are they called the Super Kids? And, I guess that's our Piccolo.
Oh, he's kind of a creepy-looking alien, but I'd date him.
You may have just thrown up in your mouth a little, but if this is a faithful ripoff, then at least we know he is perfect dad material. So what is the hubbub all about? Well, the Super Kids are about to do battle with a monster that looks like Ultros Boink Shrek. And nope, not a single fanfic written or smut piece drawn. You disappoint me, Internet.
All right, it's time to give yourself up. I'm placing you under arrest, so come quietly or you'll be sorry.
Well, come and get me.
Okay, now that music sounds way more familiar to me. But where is it from? Damn it, this is gonna drive me nuts! And here we have, in a nutshell, the experience of watching Super Kid. About 80% of this movie is nothing but the Super Kids and the monster of the day loudly screaming and just generally goofing around. You know, just like the actual Dragon Ball. Oh, shut up! You know it's true.
There's another trick I can do with my golden staff. Watch this. It's magic. Some people think it grows. All you have to do is pull it out and make it stop. You'll have to speak more clearly. I can't understand what you're saying.
Now, take that 25 seconds, stretch it to about 20 minutes, and you have the first act of the movie. Just the first.
Dear Lord, that's the loudest profanity I've ever heard.
I am so serious. The Super Kids just trade shtick and blows with Shrektros for nears makes no difference 10 minutes. For God's sake, when will this end?
And now for my secret weapon.
And why are we zooming in on his ass? Or at least I hope that's his ass.
Now you will experience true evil.
You know, I would be more angry if this were the first time a fart joke was in Dragon Ball. And people wonder why it took Dragon Ball Z to catch on here in the States.
Oh, poison!
Wait. Oh, you son of a bitch! They stole music from Final Fantasy Mystic Quest? It took them 3 years to steal music from the worst Final Fantasy ever made! I'd recognize that goddamn theme anywhere. That's the rock band music in the hotel in Fireburg. And that little cue from earlier is from the Bone Dungeon. Christ, that game was a... Nope! This show is about anime, not video games. Even though Final Fantasy Mystic Quest has an ass-kicking that is 20 years overdue, another time. Another time. In an act of mercy, Kid Noku here finally absorbs Shrektros into his golden staff after he gives himself a Marge Simpson haircut. The Super Kids collect the monster's bounty from the mayor in plain view of Mega Man? But they're soon given another monster to apprehend.
The monster also has a partner in crime. This is Mayo. We believe he acts as a lookout during their criminal activities. According to our information, he once worked as a space detective on Earth. He possesses superhuman strength and should be regarded as extremely dangerous. He also has the ability to materialize anywhere at any time, which makes him especially difficult to apprehend.
Why would Tao Pai Pai need to materialize at all? Dude just needs a stone pillar and some jumping distance and he can get anywhere. While the rest of the Super Kids are quaking in their boots at the prospect of taking on this, whatever this is, Kid Noku couldn't care less. I mean, look at him. Would you care about the prospect of a monster tearing you to shreds if you routinely dressed like Ness from Earthbound if he were a troll? He welcomes death! So they all pile into their Mazinger Z knockoff bot, because the Koreans couldn't make one chop job without ripping off Mazinger, and they are off into space, with one of them playing catch-up. His name is Rockpile, and I have no idea who he's supposed to be based off of.
We are now entering Altair Sector. I'm switching the engines into hyperspeed. And we're 7 light years from our destination. We can take a shortcut through the black hole that's dead ahead.
Jesus, I hope nobody catches their chin on that panel on its way up. Their head would pop off like a Mortal Kombat uppercut. Oh, and Bulma came along too. Great, the whole jabbering, annoying gang is here. Splendid. They finally arrive at the monster's last known location, and after a completely pointless detour with these chewed-up wads of Bubblicious, they finally come toe-to-toe with the big baddie. And I still have no idea what he's supposed to be. He might be an elephant, I think, but then why are there so many tentacles coming off his body? And the coloring is so drab and the transfer is so shoddy that it's legitimately difficult to even make heads or tails of what he even looks like. This movie is the living embodiment of the phrase, what is this? What even is this? So, Bill here, yeah, Bill, sure, that'll work, just toys around with the kids before pimping off. The kids try to chase him, but Tao here intercepts them to tell them that they're being played for fools by one of the men who put them up to this bounty. All the while he does, the aftertake and the outro of Steve Miller Band's Fly Like an Eagle plays for no discernible reason. Yeah, why not? It don't matter. None of this matters.
How do I know you're not lying? Tell me who Kakuris is!
The one who knew so much about Yudoge's crimes. You've already met him and you didn't even know it. Don't you realize Kakuris is the police captain?
And that's all the proof they need to immediately turn tail and go and kick the police chief's ass. So with this irrefutable evidence, Kid Noku and Rockpile waste even more time just mindlessly fighting the chief. They even repeat the same gags, or at least their pathetic attempts at gags.
Ah, my teeth! The dentist will charge me a fortune for this!
My teeth! Ah! That brat has broken my beautiful teeth!
I don't know what's worse. Them repeating themselves, or them just grunting and groaning and screaming in the most aggravating voices I have heard in quite some time. It's just unlistenable. I don't know what I'm doing with my life.
You wanna butt heads with me, Stone
No joke, this fight has been going on for 6 straight minutes. And it continues for another 4. And how did they decide to end it? With them scaring the chief with ants.
Doesn't seem to fit my head.
If you think for one moment that I'm going to dignify this heap with an Archer clip, I'd sooner boogie board in a goddamn piss trough. Meanwhile, the other members of the Super Kids are traveling 1,000,000 miles an hour on a magic carpet to find where Bill went. They find him and start the final battle. And it goes on for the rest of the movie. All 30 minutes of it. The kids reunite, try to take down Bill, and we find out that this isn't even his final form, which just so happens to look like Bao from, well, Bao. And Tao comes back to complete his confusing face turn by sacrificing himself to destroy Bill's power orb. And guess what? There's still 15 minutes left to go! Tao destroyed his power orb after an uncomfortable tangling scene that just kept going and going, and the movie thinks it still has enough juice to go longer? There's beating a dead horse, and then there's beating a dead horse until he's glue! The fight is over! Why are we still here? And why is Bill shifting between forms? You didn't see Perfect Cell go back to semi-perfect cell for poops and giggles. And just when you think this nightmare will never end, it finally relents. The kids finally capture Bill, and they take the reward money and give it to a bunch of orphans. How egregiously saccharine of them. But at least that's the end, and holy dog shit, that was abysmal. I know that it's not necessarily fair to criticize something made on the very definition of a shoestring budget. In a way, the fact that this was made at all is a minor miracle in of itself. But to actually sit down and watch it is to test your patience and threshold for pain. It can be ridiculous and funny at times, but that's between nearly an hour and a half of nothing but drool-inducing fight scenes and guttural screaming. Breaking down this movie, it's about 5 minutes of plot and 100 minutes of this.
You must really have rocks in your head to think you can headbutt me.
First he breaks my teeth and now my head. I can't take much more of this torture. You'll pay for that, Stone Man.
It's like someone who didn't get Dragon Ball made their own Dragon Ball. This is the physical embodiment of every criticism laid against the series by people who hate Dragon Ball. Without a doubt, this is one of the most irritating and obnoxious movies I have ever covered here on Anime Abandoned. And what's worse, I covered it because somebody was a goddamn idiot.
You're talking about me, right?
But it is never too late to set things right. So guess what? Come next August, not only are we going to talk about the actual Dragon Ball, not only are we going to cover one of its most sterling outings, but guess what? It's Toonami month. Till next time.